Not only is Castlevania Symphony of the Night a masterpiece of video game design, it's teeming with references to history, religion, literature, and folklore. This is the Annotated Symphony of the Night. We begin again in the clock room, which is a perfect place to take a quick detour upward now that we have the ability to fly. It won't take long. Here's a smattering of items that the fairy familiar would use. The game assumes at this point that you found her, which, if you follow the path that we have, is exactly what happened. The real prize up here are these gravity boots, which give us the ability to super jump upward at the cost of a little magic. This is an inessential item actually. You can do everything in the game without them, but it will certainly make things like mapping large areas faster and easier. Remember also that this is the item used in stealing items from the librarian, which we saw in an earlier video. We're heading toward another blue door that can only be accessed by the Jewel of Open. In fact, we're going to be taking a trip through an area that we could have mostly mapped just after the library, but couldn't have completely explored. Our trip through the castle in this video series is partly meant to minimize unnecessary backtracking though, so we're going to see it all in one fell swoop. This jar above us with a jewel inside is actually a good clue that we'd have to come back with further abilities if we wanted to see all that this area, the underground caverns, has to offer. The early going is populated by enemies that we've seen defending the outer wall, so they're not going to trouble us heading downward. This whole area is something of a recreation of the fourth level of the first Castlevania for the NES, complete with this trench we dropped down that started it all off. With our abilities though, we're going to actually head right back up. There's a free claymore here for our trouble. This room full of jars should probably be a clue that a boss fight is right around the corner, since most of them are full of meal tickets. I'll get back to those in a second. The bottom jar holds the very useful Moonstone. It's an accessory that boosts all of Alucard's stats by +5, quote, after sunset, according to its in-game description. This is based on the total playtime. The game assumes that you began at midnight on the play clock, so you'll have this boost until you hit 6 hours of game time, which it then thinks it's morning. The stat boost will resume 12 hours later when the game clock strikes 18 hours, and continues on like this in regular intervals from dusk till dawn. In the Saturn version of the game, the stat boosts were changed to be based on the system's internal clock. Here we are in the confined nightmare sequence that was almost cut from the game because they could barely finish it on time.
Mother!
That voice! Alucard, it's you!
I'm coming, Mother! I'll save you!
No, Alucard! Don't come here!
But Mother!
It's all right. If my death can save others, I gladly surrender my life.
Mother, no! Please, no!
Yes, Alucard. Watch me die, and remember always my last words to you.
Yes, Mother.
You must despise humans. They are to be your prey.
What?
Better for them to die than to let them compound their sins. Begin by slaying that one over there.
No, it wasn't like this.
What's wrong? Alucard.
My mother never said such a thing.
What do you mean? Kill them and bring them happiness.
No, you're not my mother. What kind of demon are you?
You broke free of my spell. I like that.
Demon, death is too good for you.
Come here, little boy, and show me what you've got.
The dialogue here adds a new wrinkle to the Castlevania mythos, in that Dracula had once loved a human woman whom bore him a half-vampire son, which we'll touch upon again in another video. Co-director Koji Igarashi mentions in the Double Fine Devs Play video that this fight was meant to be intentionally easy, which is only one of the reasons we're not having much trouble with it, and that the succubus enemy here was originally going to be topless to match the promotional art by Ayami Kojima that was used outside of the US. For the North American press, they cropped the art just under the collarbone. The sprite in the game is a bit of self-censoring though. Igarashi thought that the half-nude enemy might bring trouble down the road. A succubus is a female demon of various folklores that seduce men during your dreams. The reasons for doing so vary from story to story, often ranging from slowly killing men that have repeated nocturnal encounters with them, or to stealing their sperm to help an incubus, which is their male counterpart, impregnate mortal women. In Western culture, the succubus is often seen originating via stories of Lilith. It was the first wife of Adam before God made Eve in the biblical book of Genesis, according to some Jewish folklore. However, similar seductress-like demons appear in Middle Eastern Arabic and pre-Arabic beliefs, as well as in some Western Asian regions. These days, we tend to think of people as, quote, encountering a succubus to explain away wet dreams and nocturnal emissions, as the loss of one's precious bodily fluids outside of procreation with their spouse was seen as sinful.
Darkling, I smell your blood. You're a vampire? Could it be? That strength, that beauty. You're the son of Lord Dracula.
Death in the dream world will set your soul wandering for eternity, demon.
Wait, I beg of you.
For my money, this is also the worst voice acting in the game. Our prize isn't a hit point boosting life vessel, but the gold ring, an accessory used in a puzzle that we'll see a few videos from now. Getting back to the meal ticket, finally, it's an item that randomly generates hit point refilling food. A few items that appear are exclusive to the meal ticket. These include a Chinese bun or dim sum in the Japanese version, curry rice, a hamburger, a plate of gyros, which is aladoria in Japan, the lunch B set, a meat omelet, a mandarin orange, some parfait, a pineapple, a bowl of pudding, and a plate of spaghetti. The Stone Rose enemy from the Marble Gallery dropped the meal ticket randomly, and we'll find them again elsewhere later. The bandana we found earlier raises defense by +2 and intelligence by +1. Here's the only other pushable box outside of the alchemy laboratory. Blocking off the small spout of water on the wall will cause these spear guards to drown, stopping them from harassing us as we pass by. Sadly, Alucard doesn't gain any experience for the kills though. It's also a clue as to what would happen if Alucard here would go underwater himself. The shiitake mushroom that we grabbed is one of two different kinds of mushrooms we'll find. It's called the delicious mushroom in the Japanese version. Not an intimidating monster, but the frogs and larger toads here originated in Dracula's Curse for the NES. They also make appearances in various games in the series. The former drops pizza and a knuckle duster, which is the weakest of the fist weapons, while the latter drops also a pizza and blue knuckles. This is a unique fist weapon that uses an uppercut attack motion and can be activated while walking. As you might expect by my avoidance of water so far, the Earth's most abundant resource drains hit points from Alucard, so we need to be careful of it for now. This is actually another reference to Bram Stoker's Dracula novel, and that the evil Count couldn't move over water, which is why he needed to travel from Transylvania to London by ship. The frozen shade enemies here use attacks that are generated using the PlayStation's polygons, and are cold enough that they seem to freeze the background around them, which is a nice visual touch. They drop some ice cream and ice mail, which is a chest armor that boosts defense by +8 and is strong against elemental ice attacks.
I'll take you to a place which might be interesting for you.
Here's our friend the Boatman, known in this game as the Oarsman. The character first appeared in Simon's Quest for the NES, helping Simon cross a merman-infested lake. In Greek myth, the character of Charon performed a similar function by ferrying the dead across the unpassable river Styx to the underworld. Our shrill-voiced friend will essentially do the same for us soon enough. For the sake of brevity, I'm going to hop in the water and map this location at the expense of my hit points, but it isn't what I'd call the preferred method of exploring this area. We're not coming back through this way though, and mapping this section of the castle can be a bit tedious, so we'll take the hit to our health intentionally just this once. Inside the water here is a giant killer fish that appropriately drops an aquamarine and some sushi. Here we are back at the entrance, just east of where the hordes of mermen attacked us at the beginning of our journey. This isn't the route we're going to take, though. If we headed through this area first instead of skipping it with the warp back to the entrance after obtaining the Jewel of Open, this waterfall would have been the point of no return, forcing us to go back through the passage to the entrance that we just saw. Lucky for us, we have enough abilities that heading back up won't be a problem. Completely mapping this area is tricky though, because none of Alucard's other forms can breathe underwater at this point, including the form of Bat, making the gravity boots the preferred mode of travel. The toadstool mushroom that we found on the way up here has no use other than to poison Alucard, and the silly secret boots accessory does nothing but add 1 pixel to Alucard's height. If anything, it's a handicap because he's a slightly larger target when they're equipped. The real reason to head back up the waterfall is to get into this room, which frees our old friend the skeleton aim to break the board underneath us. The Herald shield below will add 1 heart for every projectile blocked. Its shield spell gives Alucard an extra boost to fire and thunder defense. Heralds are generally officers of arms that are dispatched to bring news and read royal proclamations, usually wearing a tabard with the coat of arms of its master emblazoned upon it. The shield we have looks enough like a coat of arms to make the naming fit. The toadstool mushroom we just found poisons Alucard normally, but if you have the Topaz Circlet equipped, which we found in the last video, it actually heals him for 1 whole hit point. Here's another interesting thing that the fairy does.
There is something funny about this wall.
She points out breakable walls. The merman statue we picked up earlier has one use in the game, and it's to make the oarsmen appear in this area and open up another chamber further ahead. It's called the mermaid statue in the Japanese version, and was probably changed during the translation because you find it so close to the infinitely spawning mermen in the entrance. This whole room is another callback to the original Castlevania for the NES, as it's a rough recreation of the beginning section of level 4. Now that we have the Holy Symbol relic, which looks conspicuously like a snorkel, Alucard will no longer sustain damage while underwater, and we can safely map the rest of this area. The elixir that we picked up is called the X Potion in the Japanese version, and will restore all of Alucard's hit points. We can also buy them from the librarian later if we want. At this stage of the game, the Skyla Worm enemy isn't much of a threat, and is one of the few boss fights that don't reward Alucard after being killed. We'll see why in a moment. Here's the full Skyla, which is the actual boss of the underground cavern. She's a monster from Greek myth that first appeared in Homer's Odyssey, and was encountered by Odysseus and his men. Other myths give her several origins depending on the writer, as a water nymph changed to a grotesque monster by a jealous Circe, or a naiad whom later mutated via poison by a jealous Aphrodite. Her worms can be killed in this fight, making it a bit easier if encountered in the early game, but she won't pose enough of a challenge to us at this point. You can also worm your way behind her by taking a few well-placed hits yourself, which give you plenty of opportunity to torture with holy water relatively safely. The prize for beating her is the Crystal Cloak, known as the Invisible Cloak in Japan. It boosts Constitution by +6, it makes Alucard semi-transparent, which also affects the appearance of his bat form, as all capes do. The scimitar we found earlier is only a few small steps up from the short sword we had at the beginning of the game, so we're pretty far beyond it at this point. These swords are of Middle East, Central, and Western Asian descent, and are lightweight curved sabers used for slashing on horseback. Its in-game icon and attack motion strangely make it a straight sword, though. The fish heads are a nice touch in that they're essentially bone pillars found underwater. They attack by either spewing flame or shooting a missile-like projectile. They'll drop a Resist Dark consumable and the Ice Brand sword. Known as the Ice Sword of Rahab in the Japanese release, it's a strong mid-game sword that deals ice elemental damage, and has an elemental attack burst that deals double damage with a fireball motion. Rahab is a term found from the biblical Psalms as being another name for Egypt as the Hebrews fled it, as well as the name of a primordial water dragon in the books of Psalms and Isaiah, and further Jewish folklore. Incidentally, the Bible and Hebrew texts have a character named Rahab, which is often mistranslated to share the same spelling as Rahab, but is a prostitute that saved 2 Hebrew spies in the book of Joshua and the New Testament book of Matthew, whom in return spared her and her families when the Hebrews sacked the city of Jericho. The sword's probably named after the water dragon, though. The in-game description actually reads that this is the Ice Sword of Mim. Mim is a petty dwarf of the First Age of Tolkien's Silmarillion, whom was famous for both his secret treasury and the fact that he betrayed Turin and his outlaw band to Morgoth and the orcs. These nunchaku aren't actually chucks at all, they're tonfas, wielded as one in each hand for quick successive strikes. Nunchaku, or nunchucks to American audience, is a martial arts weapon of Okinawan descent, and has arguably little practical use according to historians. Odds are high that you've probably seen them in popular culture before, but they're actually illegal to own in many countries, including Canada. The tonfa, on the other hand, is a weapon also attributed to Okinawan martial arts, that may have origins much earlier than that. Its combat uses are wide and varied according to the placement of the grip, and are commonly carried as nightsticks by police officers in the United States. It's time to move on to our next location. By pressing the switch near the waterfall earlier, another skeleton ape will spawn on this lengthy bridge, but must be lured back to the wooden plank. He won't automatically find his way there though, so we need to keep him on screen but at arm's length so the flaming barrel isn't tossed too early. In the next episode, we'll dive deeply into the abandoned pit and eventually come across the lowest section of the castle where an ancient biblical evil dwells. See you then.